Mike McConnell is on.
Friday morning, 8 minutes after 9 o'clock, and had this story earlier in the week where in Minnesota, they're having problems with the kids in the park after dark, or at least after the park closes, and they're looking at a device called the Sonic Screen, which emits a high-pitched, annoying sound audible mostly only to teenagers, because that's who they believe are hanging in the park, and they want them out. And I mean, things like this have been tried in the past, and I've heard about this system. Sometimes the stories I've read would have, say, a convenience store that has kids hanging out front, and they want to get rid of them. That they've thought about doing this, but have usually switched to something like beautiful music, string music, Mantovani, that kids didn't want to hang around the music, and it worked better than this. Well, you can't blast the music at night in the park, so this is where they're turning. Entering the fray is my guest and his organization, the National Youth Rights Association. The president thereof is Jeffrey Nadell, and he joins me. Good to have you on the program, Mr. Nadell. How are you?
Thanks so much. Doing well. Pleasure to be on.
All right. You've been with this group for how long now?
I started a chapter in Southeast Florida in 2008, and been involved ever since.
And were you in the age bracket back in the day, or are you still? Well, give me who you cover here, just demographically.
Yeah, our organization is a youth-led civil rights organization. So whenever people are, discriminated against because of their age, we are there to help them. I got involved with the organization when I was 15, and I'm 18 now.
Okay. I mean, at what point does this cease to cover you? When you're 25, are you no longer a youth? Is there any such thing as a cap on this?
It's actually an interesting question, because what we see on the part of governments and other private individuals is that they keep pushing the definition of childhood even further and further back. The president of the company that creates the Sonic Screen says that this technology affects people aged 13 to 25. 25-year-olds serve in Congress. So that question was really so often defined by the people who are scapegoating against youth. And, we would like to see something reasonable, but, at 18 you can vote, but then you can't drink until you're 21, and we really do see this unreasonable drawing of an arbitrary line in the sand so often.
Well, even if you're if you're in Congress, they don't want you hanging out in the park.
Right.
Either way.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but you use the word arbitrary, but no matter where you draw the line, someone's going to consider it arbitrary. I personally believe at least beer should be available to people between 18 and 21 years of age. Old enough to fight, old enough to have a beer is my
Absolutely. Could not agree more with that.
Do you know of other places where this Sonic Screen has been employed?
Yeah, absolutely. In Washington, D.C., actually, at a busy metro stop, they implemented a similar device, which was called the Mosquito, which interestingly enough, the name implies that young people are some sort of pest to be kind of swatted away, and that was implemented there, and our organization filed actually a complaint with the D.C. Office of Civil Rights, and pretty soon after it was removed, and one of the business owners in that area actually sent a letter to some of the public officials in Hastings, Minnesota, when this issue came up, and said, look, the trouble's not worth it. This device is not the right choice. So we were successful in D.C., and it basically shows the ill-fated nature of implementing this device.
Is there any place they're using it successfully? There has to be some place. I mean, for Sonic Screen to be in business, this has to be working somewhere.
This, the company that has that creates the Sonic Screen has been a playground, recreation equipment company, and this is a new product for them. We know that there has been some use of similar technology in Europe for quite some time, and the company claims that they've been using it in Canada as well. As far as the U.S. goes, we do feel that we've been pretty well on top of the implementations of this, and we haven't heard about too much else other than Hastings and Washington, D.C., but, if there are cases out there, we would encourage people to come forward and take action on this, because this is not the correct way to address the issue. We can take policing seriously, we can take protecting property seriously, or we can really implement, ineffective and prejudicial devices like these that aren't going to solve problems.
But we don't know that it's ineffective. I mean, if they don't want people hanging out in the park when it closes, and it's teenagers hanging out in the park when it closes,
Well, what we do know is that they're wildly imprecise because they rely on a deteriorating sense of hearing. Like I said, the president of the company says it applies to 13 to 25-year-olds. I've had several 28, 29-year-olds who can hear the tone, and I've had 16-year-olds who can't hear it. I've had 18-year-olds who get legitimate full-blown headaches from this sound. It varies so widely and is so imprecise that it really any claim that it's effective really can't stand.
They don't want 29-year-olds hanging out in the park either. So if it works on them and it keeps them out of the park.
Well, their claim is that, and we do feel that this is an unfounded claim, but their claim is that this is youth vandalism, and their goal was to target this certain demographic, which the device can't even do, and that's why you saw the chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission coming out and say, look, we're not even looking to force all young people away. We just want to be able to catch them in the act. And we do feel that that's why the commission eventually stepped up and said, this is not the solution that we're going to consider, and they decided, we're going to implement bright lights instead.
It's relatively inexpensive. It was only going to cost them $9,000 to put it in. Now, the post they were going to put it on was going to cost them $40,000. Right. But in order to set this up, if say a subway stop, if you just had to screw it into the wall somewhere or the ceiling, $9,000 is a lot cheaper than having a cop dedicated to the park. Yeah, and then, it's from our perspective, it's really a way of treating young people not as the group that's going to have to bear the effects of today's decisions in the future, but really as a group of second-class citizens to be controlled. We are not pests. We are human beings, and to employ this sonic bombardment that causes headaches, that affects specifically autistic children in an incredibly negative way, is just the wrong solution. Let's take this job seriously of protecting property, and there are plenty of solutions that work. Like you said, law enforcement, brighter lights, just taking this seriously versus employing solutions like this, which are painful, which are prejudicial, and which, like I said, are wildly imprecise. All right, if you're not supposed to be there because the park is closed, you're a pest. If you're involved in vandalism or destruction of property of any sort while you're there, you're a pest. This is specifically designed to stop pests. If they employed this all day long so that people that age couldn't go to the park and everybody else could go have a good time, that would be discrimination. If they want nobody in the park and they believe that this $9,000 gadget will keep the troublemakers out, I don't see where there's a problem with it. Well, you bring up a good point because we have to look at the different implementations. For example, in D.C., this was being used at a metro stop during daytime. So I think, we can both agree that is outright discrimination. Now, in this case, what we're seeing is exactly there should be no one in the park, but there is no foundation behind the assertion that, okay, this is only young people committing this vandalism. If they're determined criminals, they can put earplugs in their ears and avoid the effects of the device altogether. What this is, though, is this is targeting young people specifically when, like you said, no one should be in the park. So let's employ a solution like brighter lights, which the commission has agreed will solve the problem. And, they know their own issues better than I do, certainly, and they've claimed that. Let's employ a solution that will fix the problem, that will apply to everyone, instead of one like this that won't. Well, we have to be sensible. We know it's not the red hats, the grannies with the red hats that go out to lunch. They're not the ones vandalizing the park. Teens are. Now, we can pretend we don't know that. What's funny about this is it's one area we're allowed to profile when it comes to young people, teenagers. But it's also dead-on accurate. It doesn't matter. There'll be a new crop of them every single year. It's not like you're targeting today's teenagers to the elimination of all others. We target teenagers every year. 10 years from now, you'll be doing it. If not, you'll be doing it in 20. I just guarantee you. There's a new crop of them every single year. To be honest, it's really that mentality that demonstrates what's fundamentally wrong about the way that we look at young people, because we see this constant scapegoating and we see this desensitization of youth to violations of their rights in every sector. We have state-imposed curfews. We have, like you said, the drinking age, which at its current state makes no sense. And young people
will become accepting of these policies because they are becoming desensitized to the invasions of their rights on a daily basis.
All right, so, how about if we treat everybody equally, and no matter what you do, you go to adult court? I don't care how old you are. We have a whole system set up to treat you separately, to treat younger people to a degree with kid gloves, because we realize you're different. Now, we can make it all even and treat everybody as an adult and get rid of it, and you can have, whatever infraction, whatever crime you commit is on your record for the rest of your life. We'll throw you in prison with the grown-ups if that's where you want to be. Or we can assume that we really are different up to a certain age that you may find to be arbitrary and treat each other differently.
Well, look, even in the face of that juvenile justice system that exists now, we see young people being tried as adults every day. They're bearing the responsibility of adulthood, even though they don't have the right of voting that comes with it.
It's not even 1/10 of 1% that we treat as adults. I mean, we're talking here about, if you want to be treated as an adult and say you're exactly the same, then we have to make things even across the board.
Look, our proposition is not too radical. What we want is we want young people, we want all people to be judged on the basis of their merit and not on the basis of their age, because we've seen the disastrous effects of policies that do judge people based solely on their age, like graduated driver license systems that result in more fatalities when they are issued on that basis.
Well, I'm not sure what that one's all. Let me get a break in here. I got a few more questions for you on some other things you may stand for. How about that?
Perfect. Thank you.
What is your web address at the National Youth Rights Association?
It's at youthrights.org.
Youthrights.org. Jeffrey Nadel is the president. Stand by, Jeffrey, if you would. It's 720 WGN. Got a few more minutes here with my newfound friend here, the president of the National Youth Rights Association, Jeffrey Nadel, he would be. And all right, Jeffrey, flipping through this, you have a few other things you stand for. I guess you'd like to see the drinking age for everything to be at age 18, or is that also a little bit arbitrary?
No, well, we recognize the importance of moving towards an ideal situation. So, yeah, we want to we do advocate lowering the drinking age to 18 because, we're seeing young people go overseas and fight and die for our country who are unable to have a sip of alcohol when they come home, who are getting arrested, in fact, for underage drinking when they come back on American soil.
What's your problem with driver's licenses the way they're issued?
Well, what we see issues with is a bill that's proposed in Congress now called the Stand Up Act, and a law that New Jersey has called Kiley's Law, which are incredibly discriminatory in the way that they handle this. Kiley's Law requires people under 21 to put red decals on their car. The Stand Up Act implements all these burdensome restrictions on passengers and on the times that you can drive, implements curfews, and also says that only people under 18 can't drive distracted, use a hands-free headset and things like that. But the fact is that young people who actually go through these graduated driver license systems are more likely to get in fatal accidents and other accidents when they have a full license.
Why would they be?
Well, in large part, the reason is interesting, but also very worrisome, is actually that because of the burdensome restrictions, they're just not driving. They're waiting longer to get their licenses, and they're not getting the real-world driving experience that's necessary. So let's make the tests accurate and more difficult, the driving tests, so that people of all ages, that their skill level driving can actually be determined, and that we're not saying, oh, a 17-year-old is incapable of driving, but a 20-year-old with no driving experience can drive fine. I mean, let's really look at ability here.
But we've long had restrictions on people under 18 and in some cases 21 and what they can do when they drive. It's not a new idea. And when I first got my license, I could not drive after midnight. There's probably a restriction on how many other people could be in the car when I drove. I mean, it wasn't yesterday. It was some time ago. And those restrictions have always been in place.
Well, actually, over the last 30 or so years, the percentage of 16 and 17-year-olds who actually get their licenses at that age has declined dramatically. For 17-year-olds, it's gone from 75% to 49%. So these restrictions are becoming more burdensome. The labeling requirement that young people put decals on the license plate to make themselves, targets for predators, which we've seen, that is completely new, and we have not seen that in this country. And the trend is very worrisome, and we're beginning already to see the negative effects as some of these studies are happening. And there's a local police chief in New Jersey who was driving his son's car when it had the decal on it, and he actually had a driver come up to him aggressively, kind of trying to race him, and actually got out of the car and came up to him aggressively until he realized it was a police officer. So young people are being targeted as a result of these measures.
You can tell how old somebody is with or without a decal, though I think the decal is a stupid idea. I'd say the biggest reason that people are putting off driving isn't because of the graduated licenses. It's because people that age have, in many cases, stopped working in even greater numbers, so they can't afford the car or the insurance. So therefore, somebody else has to tow them around.
Well, 80% of young people do work before they graduate high school, so I'm not sure about that trend. But the trend that is clear is that driving among 16 and 17-year-olds is declining as these burdensome restrictions become greater and greater and are implemented at a greater frequency. And one of the biggest mistakes we can make at this point is allowing something like the Stand Up Act to pass at a national level, applying this one-size-fits-all solution that has abysmally failed in New Jersey, and the legislators agree on a national level. That would be a huge mistake, and that would prove itself very quickly.
All right, those who want to join you in your fight would once again reach you at
www.youthrights.org.
Youthrights.org. All right, Jeffrey Nadel, good to talk to you. Keep fighting the good fight. You might end up in Congress someday. We'll see what happens.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Mike.
All right, have a good weekend, too.
You too.
See you now. It's 720 WGN.
720 WGN.